Hello, Dr. Warren here, and today I want to talk a little bit about developing interview questions and about conducting the interview. So students who have gone through their first 3 chapters and gotten really dug into their topic and who their participants or their subjects are, kind of stop there, have a tendency to stop there, and then it's like the interview is an afterthought. But in fact, the interview is the heart of your study. This is where you're going to be collecting this all-important data that is going to lead you to your findings and your understanding. So it's really important to spend some time thinking about your interview questions and the interview process itself, okay? And there's lots of books written on how to conduct interviews and how to write interview questions. So typically you want to, this is a great little website. I will include this in the announcement. But typically you want to think about questions that are open-ended. You don't want to ask black and white questions like, did you enjoy that experience? Yeah, I kind of did. Right? You want to go, tell me about that experience. You want to get the story, go behind the black and white events and really get into the story, get into their emotions, get into their experience, feelings, and understandings about that experience or that event, okay? So those open-ended questions are really important. And you don't want them to be too broad. Tell me about your education, for example. So you want them to be narrow and focused around the topic and the question that you're trying to answer in your research. Okay. So the other thing that this particular article talks about is fewer questions. You don't need a lot of interview questions. You just need those questions that give opening to your participant that allows them to tell their story and their narrative. So probably 3, 4, 5 questions is enough for an hour if you are interviewing correctly. And I'll talk about that in just a second, okay? So I also like this site from Duke University, 5 tips for conducting effective qualitative interviews. So that was about the questions, and now let's talk about the actual interview process, right? So this article talks about how it's important that you understand what your intent is behind every question. What that means is, if you have a question, what is that going to look like in your data? Is that going to get you to your data, okay, to the data that you're after? So every question has to be carefully thought through, and what kind of answers, think about what answers you're going to get, and does that get you to the data that you're after to answer your research question, okay? So be very clear about what your intent is, and then the more clear you are, the more able you are to explain it or to ask the question in a way that your participant also understands what you're saying. Most important, you do not want to bias or sway or influence your participants. This is really hard because the way that we converse and interact is, we reinforce what the other person's saying, something like, yeah, I get it, and here's my experience back, right? Conversation is an exchange. An interview is more one way. Pardon me. You really want to hear what your participant has to say. Sorry about that. I had to go get a drink of water. Okay, so, so you don't want to, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So then there's also this thing called interviewer bias. We all come into a conversation and an interview with our own biases, especially after having read about this topic and you know what you're kind of wanting to find out. You have to set all that aside and come in naive, or come in not knowing what, not knowing the participant experience. It's all about you just kind of laser focused into your participant without influencing what they say, without judging. Some of your questions, some of your participants may be people who you are biased against. Maybe they're racist, or maybe they're whatever. You have to withhold all of that and be completely open to them feeling comfortable enough to say whatever is on their mind. Okay, really important. You also want to practice on your family, practice on people who are part of your participant pool, but not your particular subjects. Practice and see how those questions bounce off your interviewees. See if those questions are making sense. See if you can practice pulling stories out of your interviewees as you practice. And then you want to, after you have each interview, take a half hour, take some time to go through what your notes and go through the transcripts and replay the recording and just kind of let it all sink in. You're going to see new things, you're going to hear new things, and that's a good time to take some additional notes. I want to, I have this great book called Becoming Qualitative Researchers by Corinne Glesne and Ellen Peshkin. And I'll send that this information out along with this recording. But in here is a section talking about the interview process and the nature of interviewing, right? And so again, I'm going to just kind of reiterate and go a little deeper into some of the things that I was saying. One of the first things that you need to do is establish rapport. And so that means, you know, before the interview gets started, you know, maybe you have something in common with them. Maybe you're both teachers. And so you've got some things in common. You want to kind of establish rapport enough to where they feel comfortable talking with you. But again, be careful about the leading and the bias and letting them know what your opinions and thoughts are. It's more just about, you know, you have common experiences or something to start to build this feeling of comfort in your participant, okay? So that's kind of an art. Again, as I said, you want to go into this naively. And so you think, because you're very knowledgeable in this topic, you think you know what they're saying when they say stuff, right? And so you've got these assumptions, right? But in fact, you want to have them explain more, withhold your assumptions, and dig in deeper. What is it that you don't know about what they're saying? Where are your questions? And then, of course, how does this connect to your study and your topic, right? Your research goals, right? So then the other thing that I thought was interesting is that you want to kind of keep your respondents on track. Like some of them just will love to talk and they just go off on all these different tangents. You, as the researcher, have authority in this two-way street, or this, you know, you in the focus group, you are kind of the leader or the guide. And so you need to bring that interviewee back to the topic. If you feel that they're going off topic, that's perfectly okay, right? At the same time, good listening is really important. You want to practice your active listening skills, you know, maybe facial gestures, nods to say that you're getting it, you know, eye contact, body gestures that indicates that you're absorbing and you're listening, maybe taking notes. And so you want to kind of encourage them to continue that dialogue and continue that talk, and let them know that you really understand what it is that you're saying, right? So, so again, making clear that you did hear what they're saying without leading them, judging them, or responding, you know, in a conversational way, okay? There's a term called patiently probing. This is really hard to do, especially for people who are, you know, upbeat, quick, conversational, right? This is about stepping back, kind of pulling in a little, and allowing them the time to think on and reflect on what their experiences are, go back into those memories, go back into their emotions, and just really kind of pull those out. The interview process can be a very deep and kind of emotional experience. And so you want to allow the time for your participants to really get there and really get into that experience. And there's things that you can say to help pull that out. Again, with the open-ended questions, tell me the story, you know, what is that experience? What is your memory of that? And as they tell you a little bit, you can probe deeper by saying, tell me more. What else? What else about that? And you'll find it just starts to become a very rich and very deep experience. So your probes, patiently probing, give them time. And then another thing that's really hard for people to do is silence. Go ahead, take some time to think about this. You know, I'm not in a hurry, right? Let them know that they've got time to really go deeper. Silence literally leaves time for thought, right? Saves you from the common practice of offering your respondents your ideas and having to do more, add more questions and so forth, right? Use judiciously before the squirms set in, right? Silence is useful and easy probe. So you don't want to get them to the point where silence too long and they start to get uncomfortable, right? Another thing that you can do is just utterance, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And that's kind of leading them to say more, okay? So I think, again, go ahead and practice your skills, practice your questions, make sure that they're getting to the data and the answers that you're looking for. And I wish you all the best in your interview experiences.